Welcome everybody, and thanks for joining me for this walkthrough tutorial showing how I created this lovely Flipbook animation using Davinci Resolve. We will cover topics including still frame animation, animated text clipping masks, and alpha blending using multiple layers. Let's dive in. First, let's look at the still frame animation component. I sourced images by running the same text prompt through DALL-E via Crayon's web-based UI. I also used their built-in screenshot tool to make sure all the still images were the same size. This allowed me to select all the stills and drag them directly into the timeline. And remember, always make sure to configure timeline settings before adding any media. You can't change this setting later, so be careful. Here, I used a standard 4K output at 60 frames per second. After adding the stills to the timeline, I switch to the Cut tab and select all the stills with Command A. Right-clicking on an individual still reveals a menu option for changing the clip duration. Using this, you can adjust the clip length of all the selected stills. I used a 10-frame duration to achieve 6 frames per second in the resulting composite clip, which I create by navigating to the Edit tab, selecting all the stills again, and selecting New Composite Clip from the menu. This will snapshot all the stills into a clip, which makes it possible to apply fusion effects such as the text clipping mask. It also makes it much easier to account for any layout transformations we need to apply to the stills themselves. In the case of Crayon, the stills include a text box at the top showing the prompt used to generate the image. By consolidating all the stills into a composite clip, we can apply bulk transforms to zoom in on just the parts we want in the final video. This also applies to keyframe animations, which you'll see shortly. Now that we have a composite clip, we can apply the first animation effect, which is a combined pan and zoom effect. Starting with the full 3x3 image centered in the frame, I configure animation effects for the zoom and offset in the inspector panel. First, navigate to the frame when you want the animation to begin or end, and click the dot to the right of the inspector control. Here, I define the end state of the animation at the end of the clip, as we want an effect where the end state is zoomed in relative to the starting state. Jump back to the beginning and play to confirm the effect looks right, and it does. Next step is to configure the text clipping mask, which we'll do in the Fusion tab. First, we need to duplicate the existing clip in the timeline. Both of these new clips will play at the same time, but each has its own unique effects. So we separate them into 2 tracks. One track has the text clipping mask, and the other has an opacity effect. Switching to the Fusion tab, I find a clip in the Clips panel and add a text node to apply the clipping effect. In the Inspector panel, I define the text as example and immediately see the results in the preview. Before continuing to fine adjustment, I switch back to the Edit tab to confirm the effect is being applied to the correct clip in the timeline. Turns out it is not, so I undo the change and select a different option from the Clips panel. Now I can proceed to the fine adjustments. I chose the word peaceful to highlight a theme from the video for extra emotional connection with the audience. I also scaled the text size to match the edges of the final scaled image, so the text will span the entire width of the screen. Now I switch back to the Edit tab for a quick screen test, playing from the beginning to get a sense of continuity. We see the effect is starting to take shape, but the layout is off. Back into the Fusion tab to adjust the position of the text within the clip. Here I use the crop lines from the still composition as a guide to help center the text between them. Once I have the alignment ready, I add the text animation. Here, it works a little differently from the Edit tab. We have more control over the animation itself with keyframes. We set a keyframe by right-clicking on the animation dot in the inspector and selecting the Set Key option from the menu. Do this for both begin and end frames, and see the results by dragging the frame cursor in the timeline. We have even more control in the spline panel. Here, after selecting the node and zooming to fit, I adjust the spline control handles to ease in and out for a nice smooth effect. Again, you can preview the timing directly in this tab. Once I have everything adjusted how I want, I switch back to the Edit tab for another screen test to confirm. Looks good for now, so I move on to the final component. The end of this clip involves a fade to white text on black background. To do this, I add a custom text clip to the timeline and assign it the same text we used in the clipping mask. Same font, same size, same everything. However, because the clip is also scaled, we need an extra adjustment to align it. For this, I set the playhead to the transition point between the clips and use the arrow keys to go back and forth between the clips, nudging the text size and layout until they look like they match. Finally, I add a copy of the original clip again, with an animated opacity effect using the same techniques as before. Here, it fades out completely, leaving only the white text in the final frame. And just like that, we're done. Now, let's watch the whole final cut. So peaceful. Thanks for watching.